This is Diana Sullivan in Austin, Texas. Today I want to show you a very nice lie flat edge that's good for an afghan or other project. So I'll show you how to knit a sample to try this out and then show you how it's latched. Now this takes a few minutes to do because you have to latch some stitches afterward. This is on the knit side. It's got a couple of obvious grooves from latching. They look like, kind of like there's a bit of ribbing, but it's not. It's different. And this is what the purl side looks like. Wonderfully flat, double thick, and let me point out that around the edge, the knitting curls around. To make a swatch and have a practice of doing this technique, I'm casting on my bulky machine from needle 15 left to 15 right. My tension is on tension 7, and I'm just going to make a plain stockinette stitch swatch. I am, however, on the side where the anti-roll edge will be, taking the 5th needle back to A position out of work. So I have 4 needles, and then skip 1, and then the rest of the needles. And I'm going to cast on using a loose E-wrap cast on. Every so often I pull a little yarn down from overhead to make sure this is loose enough. And I'm just doing a longer than usual wrap where the needle is out of work. And then I'm going to hang a comb, and I'm going to hang a couple of weights, one on each end. And I'm going to knit 40 rows and then be back to talk to you about the bind off. I'm going to do the loop through a loop bind off, but first I'm going to drop the end stitch. If this was an edging on both sides, I would drop both end stitches. I'm going to bring the machine as loose as I can get it, and then I'm going to knit very slowly, continuing to pull down extra yarn so that it'll be really loose for this last row. And then I'm going to do the loop through a loop bind off. But there is one thing I want you to notice that is going to be a little bit out of the ordinary at this point in the job. The 3rd stitch after the empty needle, right here, this needle, this stitch needs to be dropped and allowed to unravel. So I'm pushing that needle back, and I'm going to let this stitch drop and unravel. Then I'm going to do my typical loop through a loop bind off. You've seen this bind off before. I put my latch tool in and pull this first loop off. Then I put it in the second loop. I have the first loop below the latch, the second loop in the latch, and I pull it through. And I just repeat that and work my way across. I like this bind off because it looks like a hand knitter's bind off. When I get to the far end, I just pull the loose end through the last loop. So I'll do this and then show you the latching part of the job. This is the sample I just knitted, and like all stockinette, you can see how determined it is to roll up. Now on one end where the anti-roll edge is going to go, I have this row of, or I should say column, where there was a needle out of work. So that makes little ladders. And we're going to use that for the latching up job. I also, after 2 ordinary stitches, I've got a stitch that is going to unravel because there's nothing holding it. See, it'll come apart. And I'm going to turn this so the purl side is up and get my latch tool and show you how I'm going to proceed with doing the very edge of the work. The idea is to fasten this rolled edge in with this row of ladders. You can see that these ladders are looser than the other loops between stitches. I start by going in just above that top ladder. I'm going to poke my tool through the bind off. I've poked my tool right through the V-shaped bind off and under through there and under the next ladder down. There we go. Now I go over to the side edge and I unravel one of these loops. Now this is going to be a long loop because it is 2 rows. It's the stitch at the end of a row and the stitch at the beginning of the next row. So it unravels and makes a long loop. And then I pull it through the 2 loops that were on the latch tool. Now I go under 2 more ladder pieces. So now there's 3 on the hook. Go over to the edge, unravel that long edge loop, and bring it through the 3 on the hook. Then go back, find my next 2 ladders, then pull the loop out and bring it through them. So under 2 ladder rungs, unravel a loop and pull it through. And you do this all the way down. You are working from the top to the bottom of the piece. And when you get to the bottom, you have to have another piece of the yarn to secure the loop. So you'll want to cut another piece, a few inches, and after you secure your loops, then that'll give you something to sew down. Now here I am part way down, and you can see how this has pulled this around and fastened it over those few stitches, which gives me this nice edge that is double thickness and quite anti-roll. But as I will show you in a moment, it's not anti-roll enough. So I'm going to go ahead and go down to the bottom and be right back. Now that I'm down at the bottom, I have the last loop and I'm pulling that through, and then I'm just going to go under the edge and get another piece of the pink yarn, pulling it down from above and snipping it off. I'm just going to bring this piece of pink yarn through there because I need something to secure this with later. So that can be sewed down later. That's my first latching job, but I have another latching job to do. Before I do the second latching job, notice this still wants to roll. It's flat at the very edge, but then it wants to roll inside that. So I found this was most effective if I dropped this additional stitch. Remember that I dropped it right before I bound off, and there it is sticking up. Well, I'm going to rip this down, all the way down. I don't rip the edge stitch down ahead of time. It's easier for me to do it as I go. But this one, I like to do ahead of time. So here we go, rip, rip, rip. Very destructive. Look what a big ladder that makes compared to that little bitty ladder for the other one. Now again, I'm going to work in the same direction from the top of the knitting toward the bottom of the knitting. And I'm going to get my latch tool. I'm looking for this chain edge at the top. I'll put my tool there. Then I go under 2 of these big ladders, take the bottom ladder and pull it through the other loops on the hook. Then go through 2 more ladders, get the bottom ladder only and pull it through the other 2. If you pull 2 through 2, it distorts your knitting. So I pull 1 through 2. I don't like the knitting to look shrunken where I put the anti-roll edge on, and this was really quite a decent solution. So I'm working my way down. I think you can see this goes fast. I'm doing 2 rows at a time after all. need to get the last few. So that one, and pull this one through, and find the big ladder, pull that one through, then go to the very bottom. Oh, here's one I didn't unravel. We'll get the very last one through, and then we're going to pick up this pink yarn that has to be sewed down later. So this is our edge, the completed edge. It's quite interesting on the back. It looks almost like a row of tuck stitch on the purl side. In fact, they both do. And then on the knit side, look how flat that is. We've got one side that rolls like mad, and we've got one side that just lies there and behaves. So there you go, an interesting anti-roll edge for you to try. If you like these YouTube videos teaching machine knitting, please click subscribe and click thumbs up. The way the YouTube algorithms work, this is what will get my videos suggested to more knitters, and maybe we'll get more machine knitters, and maybe we'll get more machine knitters who are getting great results with their hobby.